So in this video, we're going to round out our discussion of TCP/IP networking, and we're going to compare and contrast TCP versus UDP. And we have already discussed TCP in some depth, and we're going to get into a similar level of depth with UDP, and briefly talk about where each protocol shines the best. So as we discussed, there's two major protocols used in the IP protocol suite, TCP and UDP. TCP stands for Transmission Control Protocol. It is connection-oriented. It gives you assured delivery by retrying any failed packets, and it also gives you flow control. Now, I won't go into a whole lot of detail about TCP because we've already done that earlier in this course. But you'll remember from our discussion of TCP how it actually does all of this assured delivery and these retries. And it does this by doing the sequence number and acknowledgement numbers, and if a sequence number is missed, then it resends just that one packet. And so we'll talk about where it is used on the next slide. UDP is the User Datagram Protocol, and it's pretty much the inverse of TCP. UDP is smaller than TCP in most cases because of the smaller packet header. It does not do error checking. It does not do assured delivery. Essentially, UDP just throws the data on the wire, and, I hope it got to where it needed to go. Now, when I say that UDP does not do error checking, UDP does check the individual packets to make sure that they did not get corrupted on the wire from point A to point B. However, UDP does not do the same error checking as TCP to make sure that all of the segments of the stream made it from point A to point B. Again, it just kind of puts the data out there, and if it gets there, great, and if not, well, then I hope you can recover. I know you're probably thinking to yourself, oh my goodness, where would you ever use UDP? That just sounds horrible. You just throw data out there, and if it doesn't get there, you have no way of knowing. Well, we'll talk about situations where that's actually preferable on the next slide. Speaking of the next slide, TCP is used when the data absolutely positively has to get there, overnight or not, to steal a 30-year-old marketing phrase. TCP is used in some of the more popular protocols that you probably used, HTTP, FTP, POP3, SSH, Telnet, they all use TCP. And that's because if you're in the middle of an HTTP download and a packet gets dropped, well, you want to make sure that you actually got that packet, because what if that's the critical bit to the file that you're downloading? If you don't have the entire file that you're downloading, well, then the file's useless in most cases. UDP, on the other hand, is used if the data is replaceable or if it's not really needed in its entirety. UDP is used in such protocols as TFTP, Voice over IP, DNS, NFS, etc. I know you might be looking at that and saying, NFS, well, that's a file sharing protocol. You kind of want to make sure you get all your files from point A to point B. And that's true. However, NFS is actually a higher level protocol. And so it takes care of the error correction and retransmission higher in the stack. Down here at the network layer, it uses UDP as its transport because it is a lot faster and smaller and more lightweight. UDP is used on most modern networks all the time with voice over IP. As part of the work files, I've actually included a capture file that includes a G711 VoIP stream, and you can actually see the UDP packets on that stream. And the reason why UDP is used is, again, it's small and fast, but also if you drop a 1/10 of a second from a UDP stream, well, by the time that UDP might realize that that 1/10 of a second is gone, you've already progressed past the need for that, so you don't really need that data. If it never gets to where it's going, well, then it's not really a huge loss. Now, I know I've talked about how TCP and UDP have radically different packet structures, and as an example, here is the TCP packet. You'll notice we have source port and destination port. We have sequence and acknowledgement, and we have all these flags and window sizing and checksums, whether or not it's urgent, so on and so forth. That's the TCP packet header. UDP, on the other hand, is quite small. Source port, destination port, length, checksum, and data. You'll notice there's no sequence, there's no acknowledgement, no flags, window sizing, so on and so forth. It just puts the data on the wire and hope it gets there. Now, as an example of this, I have an RTP stream capture that I downloaded off the internet. You can actually decode the RTP stream that's included in this file. It's in a language that I don't understand, although I'm sure that someone that watches this video will probably understand the language that's being spoken in that RTP stream. You'll notice that in comparison to our TCP packets, these UDP packets are very, very small. For example, here's TCP. It can go 103 in length or even larger depending on the protocol. UDP packets, they're 294 bytes in length, and you'll look down at the UDP. There's a source port and the destination port. There's the checksum, and there's the data. It's got just the payload for the G711 codec built into the packet, and that's it. Again, there's no sequencing, there's no acknowledgement, so on and so forth. All these packets are very small, they're very lightweight. You don't have to worry about sequencing and all the other overhead that comes with TCP. So again, UDP is a lot more lightweight, and hence its use in real-time transport protocols such as voice over IP and video over IP, and so on and so forth. And that, my friends, concludes our discussion of TCP versus UDP.